Ladies and gentlemen, this is Metagetics and welcome to my new series, Rediscovery of Dragon Ball, Volume 1, Chapter 1. Now depending on which version of the manga you pick up, should you decide to, the title may vary everywhere from Budama and Son Goku all the way to Bloomers and the Monkey King. Now over the course of our adventure, I will be paraphrasing as well as skimming over a few things for the sake of time and story focus. Do rest assured I will cover any details that may become important down the road. The Dragon Ball manga first premiered 33 years ago in Japan's serialized weekly Shonen Jump magazine in 1984, running all the way to 1995, consisting of 519 individual chapters. Dragon Ball's story and art come from the talented mind of Japan's own Akira Toriyama. With this being a Japanese manga, the panels will read from top right to bottom left. While most fans of Dragon Ball are familiar with the Dragon Ball Z anime, which aired in the late 90s and early 2000s, or even the more recent Dragon Ball Kai, many followers of the series, admittedly myself included, have never experienced the story of Dragon Ball itself. It is my hope to not only broaden my personal horizon with the experience of Dragon Ball for the first time, but to share it with you, whether this is your first or fifth time. I welcome you and hope you enjoy the ride. So jumping right in, we meet our hero, Son Goku. For future reference, I'm going to go and stick with just Goku as he's more commonly known. Living up in the mountains, far from civilization, he basically does his own routine on the daily. One thing you need to take away from this is that Goku's experience with society and other people is zero. Now jumping ahead for the sake of story, the only person Goku has ever known was his grandfather, who taught him martial arts quite effectively. And of course, the mystery of his grandfather's whereabouts will be addressed at a later time. And continuing with our hero, as far as he's concerned, the way he's living is not unusual in the least. Goku doesn't really understand that his strength is absolutely off the charts. After some morning chores, Goku returns home having worked up quite an appetite. Now speaking to an orange crystal-like ball as if it contained his grandfather's spirit, he finally heads off in search for a hearty lunch. Little did he know, an unexpected visitor was about to change his life forever. A short time later, Goku used his tail down by the lake as a kind of fishing lure and was well on his way back with a giant fish he couldn't wait to eat. Now next we're going to transition to what will be Goku's first encounter with not only a girl, but a car too. Making his way back home, he suddenly hears the strangest noise. So he looks behind him just in time to see what we know to be a car barreling towards him, screeching to a halt at the very last second. So here Goku kind of panics. He thinks he's being attacked. He leaps forward, picks up the car, and throws it to the side, without any hesitation, basically challenging the attacker for the right to his food. And this is where we meet Bulma for the first time. Young, sassy, and loaded with a handgun, she pops out the window, not really appreciating the fact that she just went for a little trip, and opens fire. These shots not only connect, but send Goku reeling back. Bulma seems to lose her anger rather quickly after realizing she just shot a kid. But sure enough, Goku springs to his feet, whips out his staff, and is all up in her face demanding answers. What happened next contextually is we as the reader get some confirmation of Goku's understanding of how things work, or at least lack thereof. Bulma is in fact the first girl he's ever met, and the first human besides his grandfather, who he confirms is dead. One of the few things his grandfather ever told him in case he ever met a girl was to always treat them nice and take care of them. This is also the first time the fact that Goku has a tail is even acknowledged. It is done almost as a side note. He simply points out how strange it was that she didn't have one. Bulma doesn't exactly say anything back about this because no regular person has a monkey tail. Instead, Bulma basically chalks it up as Goku having one pinned on, as the sort of phase kids go through. Goku soon comes to the realization that Bulma is from the city far to the west. After all is said and done, Goku's ecstatic to make a new friend. He immediately invites her to his home in order to share the giant fish he caught. A short time later, they finally arrive. Here, Goku asks Bulma to wait outside a moment while he pays his respects and greets the curious orange crystal ball the same way he did when he left. Now, Bulma catches a glimpse of the ball and loses it. Crying out in joy and rushing past Goku, she explains this was the Dragon Ball her radar was guiding her to all along. Goku leaps forward himself, objecting that she isn't even supposed to touch it. He regularly refers to it as his grandfather because it's the only real possession left to him. Here, Bulma takes a step back to explain that what Goku has is called a Dragon Ball. She then produces two more from her bag, proving her claim. She continues by telling him she found one in her cellar one day and nobody even knew what it was. After a great deal of time and research, she was able to find an ancient tale stating that there were 7 Dragon Balls, each glowing from tiny stars within, ranging from 1 star to 7. In this instance, Goku's Dragon Ball contained 4. Once all 7 Dragon Balls are collected and the correct chant is spoken, Shenron, the Dragon God, is summoned and will grant any one wish. According to legend, the last person to gather all Dragon Balls became king centuries ago. With Goku's, she would now have 3 and almost halfway to her wish for, well, get this, a perfect boyfriend. Instead, he immediately shoots her down, claiming she can't just take his grandfather, as he now called it. With Bulma not being one to give up, her overzealousy shows through trying to bribe Goku. Flipping up the back of her skirt, she offers to let him cop a feel, not exactly thinking the whole thing through. She soon realizes that her bribe definitely backfired when Goku stared straight at her and asked, "Why would I want to touch your dirty old butt?" Now, with his last comment nearly driving her up the wall, the only other thing she could think of was to ask him to join her on the adventure. Now, she also came to the conclusion that this tough little kid would probably make a pretty good bodyguard. The opportunity for adventure with a new friend was more than Goku could resist. Accepting her offer, he quickly came up with the question of how were they going to find the rest of the Dragon Balls. Now, in this case, Bulma was quick to respond that she discovered low-level energy that emitted from the Dragon Balls themselves, and it wasn't long before she could make a radar that tracked their very movement, and that's what brought her here today. Since Goku had made short work of her car, Bulma pulled out a small box with a couple dozen hoi poi capsules. You can think of them as a way of storing items in a small container that could fit in your pocket when you need them. Bulma clicked the top, tossed it, and out popped a motorcycle, which caused our young hero to claim she was a witch all along before she could explain what they were. Skipping ahead a short time later, Bulma picked up a little too much speed cresting a hill and sent them airborne. After a hard crash landing, Bulma decided she needed to make a quick stop. At this point, nature was indeed calling after her recent scare. Following a heated back and forth, Bulma excused herself and told Goku to stay with the bike, to allow her some privacy, of course. A short while later, Goku heard her scream for help and he quickly sprung to action. Unexpectedly, he came in contact with a kind of winged dinosaur holding a speechless and terrified Bulma. Now Goku, the ever-loving country bumpkin, basically asked the dinosaur if he was Bulma's friend, whom stated he was and needed to talk to her alone, and then he flew off. All the while being carried off, Bulma's fear turned to anger at Goku's stupidity, demanding he rescue her right away before she gets eaten. And just like that, Goku was off to the races to fix his error in judgment. Running straight for the motorcycle, Goku knew he needed to go fast. Mashing buttons and flicking switches, he finally got the bike running. Pulling back the throttle like he remembered seeing Bulma do, the bike rocketed down the road. It wasn't long before he saw the perfect hill to try what Bulma did earlier. Goku gave it all he had, and the bike screamed up the hill, sending him airborne, straight at Bulma's captor. When the bike started to lose momentum, Goku jumped off directly towards the dinosaur, whipping out his staff and brought it down with all his might right on its head. Now this of course left Bulma free falling to her end. Needless to say, Goku had this. He took careful aim and hurled his staff like a javelin to catch her right before hitting the ground. The dinosaur fell dead and Goku landed safely, taking a moment to make sure his aim was true. Sure enough, there was Bulma pinned to the side of a cliff, safe and sound. She even took the opportunity to take a pee break, unintentionally of course. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 1 of the Dragon Ball manga. If you're new here and enjoyed the video, please don't forget to give a like and hit that subscribe button. It's my goal to do at least one chapter a week going forward. Please feel free to comment down below on how you discovered Dragon Ball, even what kind of videos you'd like to see in the foreseeable future. Again, this is Metagetics thanking you for your time and hope to see you again.